There's a sea of mountains. Like most of them are quite skiable, but Revelstoke's known to be this powder town. Endless potential for adventure. Mountains as far as you could go. Because that's the idea. The idea is let's have adventure, let's live full lives, but let's just figure out little ways to have a little bit of a lighter footprint. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to kind of take this idea and start exploring it because it's an interesting one. I think a lot of us are wondering how we can still adventure and live great lives while recognizing that the environment is being affected by our footprints and everything like that. And, none of us are perfect. We're just trying to look at progression and try to how to be better. And, that's basically the idea is like, how can we live the lives we want to live, yet perhaps be a little bit better towards the world? Here's a little something on me. I've been a ski guide for 15 years, spent a lot of my life just sharing the mountains with people. And during that time, I've also done a bunch of big adventures, which we'll get into later on, and got these Adventure of the Year 2005 and somehow top 25 fittest guys in the world for 2011, which I would argue to the end of the earth, but it's still something I'm always going to tell my kids. And then, yeah, since 2017, I've been working on electric Greg and just trying to explore sustainable adventures. So we'll get into that. Basically, this is how the talk will go today. Is we'll start off with, well, why Revelstoke, why I'm here, and why I want to share the mountains and the snow around here. And then we'll delve into my personal journey, and then kind of explore my eco guilt and what I ended up trying to figure out what I could do with my life. And then we'll go into a little bit of education stuff, not too deep, but just kind of talk about carbon calculations and how we can see our own impacts on Earth. And then we'll get to the green skiing idea that this is really all about, and something that I want to explore with you and with clients from around the world. So, and then hash it out and see what we can do, and hopefully inspire some of you to come out and ski. Yeah. So why Revelstoke? When I moved here in 2000, nobody in Vancouver even knew where Revelstoke was. I'd tell people I was in Revelstoke and be like, what? Where is that? And to me, it's what's special about Revelstoke is definitely this. Revelstoke's just known for its powder. It's endless. There's endless terrain. There's endless good skiing, and that's definitely how it's become known. I mean, look at this. Like that's just one small bit of a run that went for thousands of meters that day. We skied so much. But Revelstoke's known to be this powder town, but really there's a lot more to Revelstoke. It's kind of got this magical feel to it in the winter. Here, this is early in November. The snowbanks hadn't built. But right now, those bears are basically surrounded by snow that's probably almost up to their shoulders just from being plowed and pushed around. And when I first came here in 1995, I remember driving into the town, and it was kind of the snowiest, most mountain town I've ever seen. And what's great about it is that it's still got this core. It's got this beautiful ski resort, Revelstoke Mountain Resort, that's great. But the whole town has maintained this core, this kind of like historical feel to it. It just feels like a real town full of real people, but it's just endless adventures out of it. It's surrounded by mountains like this. This is Sir Donald, an 11,000 or 3,500 meter mountain. This is Rogers Pass, and there's a sea of mountains like this everywhere. And this one doesn't really show the skiability of them, but most of them are quite skiable. That's actually one of the few peaks around that we can't ski from. I have not figured out the line from it that's actually skiable and fun. But really, Revelstoke has that. It's this tiny little iconic little ski town surrounded by mountains as far as you can see. It's absolutely unbelievable. Here's another shot in Rogers Pass. This kind of shows more of the skiable mountains around. But when I moved here in 2000, I moved here for this background, for all the untouched snow around, all the different ski lines, and just the fact that it had this incredible powder, like I showed you in that video. But then it had endless potential for adventure, mountains as far as you could go, and just, places people had never been, or places I'd never been for sure. And it's been, 20 years of just exploring and adventuring around here and just looking for that new line and just kind of trying to ski everywhere. And really, since I've become a guide, it's about sharing that experience with everybody and just bringing everyone out here. I've traveled around the world. I've been in Norway, Europe, South America, and I've yet to see a place that has the consistent snow that Revelstoke has, plus that mountain charm and just this endless amount of adventure. There's so much just powder around. This is basically, it wasn't this deep yesterday, but there's good skiing yesterday and it hasn't snowed for over a week. And there's always this snow that stays colder and stays for longer than anywhere else I've seen. I've skied in the Wasatch and it's incredible. It's super deep, but then 2 days later, it's all gone. And this place just has some sort of, I don't even know if it's the altitude or the elevation or, where it is in the world, but somehow the snow stays great for a lot longer than it should. It's just explosive pow everywhere. And I mean, this is what I live for. I've moved here basically just to explore and always get turns like this. I can actually remember the first turn that made me move to Revelstoke. I was out touring here for one of my first times, and I'd been skiing, and it was really good. It was really good. And I couldn't believe how good it was. And then I hit this roll, and as I hit the roll, and the snow just kept billowing over my shoulders and my face. And I was like, oh my God, I'm moving here for the rest of my life to search for that feeling. And that's what I've been doing for 20 years, just kind of searching for that feeling. But what's also neat about Revelstoke is that, you know, this is that classic cheesy comment. It's like, oh, I moved here for the winter, but I stayed for the summer. And it really does. It's got, in the summer, there's incredible hiking, there's lakes everywhere. And it's just a beautiful summer place too. It gets hot. And that's what I guess I really like about Revelstoke, is that there's 4 seasons. There's 4 real seasons, and everyone is totally different. Like right now there's whatever 4 feet or a meter plus of snow outside, but then in the summer it's 35, 40 degrees Celsius, and it's just got it all. And it's got the rainy season, and it's got it all. Here's the dam or the lake. It's got a 100-kilometer lake above us, and it really is. There's a serenity to the mountains. There's a lack of people that you can really often go and just find yourself alone in these beautiful places. And it's kind of an untouched wilderness. So yeah, my personal journeys, we'll delve into this. And I grew up in Quebec, but somehow I ended up out here searching for these turns and searching for these adventures and skiing under the Milky Way and just doing all these wild things. And it's just been an endless adventure for me. And it really all started out as just a young, keen kid. I had a lot of black eyes. I don't know why. I'd fall, test limits, and just always looking to see how far I could go and how high I could climb and stuff. And, you know, here I am with one of my first of many black eyes. Yeah, I grew up in Sutton, Quebec. I skied the groomers there, and really we would skip school and go skiing as a family. And we do that often because if there's a 20-centimeter pow day, I was like, why not? Let's go. And to me, part of the appeal of skiing, or the magic of skiing, is that I kind of feel like I'm always skipping school a bit and hanging out with my parents and having fun. I moved out west in the 1998 to start ice climbing. I was a big rock climber. My shoulders started dislocating, so all of a sudden I lost this passion of mine that was really big. It was something like, it drove me. I loved the challenges and I loved the rewards, and all of a sudden I couldn't rock climb. So luckily I've always been a skier, and I started to kind of get into this whole ski mountaineering and just these adventures that you could human powered, and you could get on top of these peaks, and there was this buildup of energies, and then you get to the top, and it was just this like, oh, I'm up at the top. It feels amazing. And it's been like that for years. I just love that challenge with the reward, and it's what I do. And, you know, at the time I was in my young 20s, and I kind of knew that I had to follow my own path, but I also didn't want to be labeled as a ski bum, because I didn't want to be a bum. I want to take life and live it to its max. And part of a way to prove to myself, to my dad, to the world that I wasn't just being a ski bum, is I started kind of obsessing over these vertical goals. And this little number here on the watch, 50,000 feet or 1,500 meters, is what I kind of ended up noticing that I could do in a day. Not noticing, but I spent about 5 years training to see what my human potential was in 24 hours. I started off, the record around Revelstoke was 20,000 feet. And then all of a sudden I did 30,000 feet. And then I'd heard of 30,000 feet in the States, but then the next year I did 40,000 feet. And then eventually I went and did 50,000 feet with this other American down in the States. And it was this incredible day, 23 hours of just uphill, downhill to get this vertical. But it really was just to kind of show to myself that I wasn't a ski bum, and then I was like seizing life and just living it to its max. And that's kind of been my MO ever since. It's like, what can I do? What I did in 2010 is, this was a year-long dream, is I was like, oh, what is my potential in a year? Like, if I dedicated all my energies every day to climbing vertical and to skiing mountains, like, what could I really do? And I spent that entire year, 2010, from January 1st to December 31st, climbing and skiing mountains. I took a lot of days off because I had a family and kids, but basically I averaged 7,500 feet a day, or 2,100 meters a day for my ski days. And in the end, I attained this goal of mine that was 2 million feet. It was really just this culmination of learning enough mountain sense, learning to develop my fitness, and all those individual days being big, and just really kind of figuring out how to do it safely, and then how to have the best year I've ever had. I mean, I climbed 77 different mountains. I skied a bunch of first descents. I traveled to South America. I traveled to the Yukon. It was just like this crazy year of adventure. And right near the end, this is kind of the clip of me right finishing it off.
So are you there?
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
Whoa, I guess I am gonna get emotional. Holy shit.
You're a nutbag. You're crazy.
Yeah. Holy shit, 1 year. Yeah, Don got me started back there.
We were talking about it.
Wow.
Well, what better place to finish it off than Rogers Pass? with friends and family for sure. And frozen tears.
But yeah, that was a big one for me. I mean, I put so much effort all year. I had that little number on my watch and I'd watch it go up. And it was this constant kind of stress, although, you know, I don't believe anything you achieve shouldn't come without a bit of doubt. And that one I had doubt the whole time. I didn't, you know, I knew it was this goal that I could probably do, but the whole time there's this doubt and there's worries and could I do it? And it was amazing. I had no idea that I was going to cry at that point, but I put so much effort in. I'd worried so much about it. I'd focused so much on it that little numbers meant so much to me that I finally like just achieved it. And it made me realize that's how I'd like to live life. I want to have these challenges. I want to live a life that feels special. And I think all of us do. I think that's one of the biggest things for all of us is we want our lives to be special. We want to like, if our lives were a book or a story, we'd want to be able to read that story and go, wow, that's a really cool life. And that's something that for me has become really important. That watch, you know, as important as it was, it's in a drawer over here on my right, the battery's dead. And it doesn't mean anything anymore, but that whole experience, that year of everything, that emotional reward is meant everything to me ever since. It's changed me a ton. So after that, I realized that year I'd flown places all around the world. I'd taken my big F-350, I'd snowmobiled, and I realized that my footprint was huge, that my impacts on the earth while I was gaining these rewards was huge. And I was like, oh, is there a way that I could be a better adventurer? And this year for this whole month, as I gave up fossil fuels and I biked to all my adventures. And it was a really cool idea because I was like, oh, I can do this. It's all human powered. I'm not using any fossil fuels. I'm kind of just going to show that we can be better. But I realized that quite often my partners were driving by with a car and there'd be a space in it. So really I could have just gone in their car because nobody wanted to bike 20 kilometers, then hike 2,000 meters, get back down and bike 20 kilometers back. And I realized like it's a great idea, but it wasn't easy enough for people to grasp onto and do because it just seemed like there's a small number of people that had that determination, that time and that focus. So although it was my first month without fossil fuel usage directly, obviously there's plastic and carbon fiber and all that stuff, but it was really the first month of me trying to be better. And I just realized that it was a great idea, but it wasn't easy enough and nobody was really going to take it on. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and I kind of continued to look at my own life and find my own challenges. So this was a month where I did 330,000 feet in the month or 100,000 meters of skiing. And I had to ski in a different place and it was really exploratory and I was pushing myself to the end. And
yeah, I just think that you got to live a life where every once in a while you're just like, you give it your all and then you complete something and yeah, it feels good.
And that's really what I think we should all want to do with our lives. We should all try to figure out what makes us feel great, explore that, push ourselves so that you get those rewards. Basically, yeah, it was adventure that year. I went and got my full ski guide. After that, I was feeling like I was really fit. I'd just done 100,000 meters in a month. I was a full ski guide. I was just crushing the world. I was like, yes, I've got this. You know, I'm certified. I'm really fit. And I realized I started to have a bit too much confidence, a bit of false confidence going on because I just thought I knew. And that's really where stuff kind of messes up in your life. Once you start realizing you're just feeling too good. And I got invited to go to Pakistan. So we went to Pakistan, as far from my house as you could possibly go. And then I went there and I just was feeling just too confident and the group wasn't willing to question me. So I went and I was like, oh, we can go over here and I can get an angle on this ski descent and you guys can watch it and we'll film it. And it was a bit of Kodak courage too. I don't know if you've ever done something stupid for a camera, but here I am.
Oh, fucking hell. Oh, Greg. Watch him, watch him. Watch.
So what happened there, like I said, Kodak courage, just false confidence. And instead of doing a ski cut and stopping like I normally would, that I've done hundreds of times and triggered small avalanches and pushed them down, that one, because I wanted to be a hero, I just kept shredding down and about 3 turns down, look over my shoulder and there's this crazy avalanche and it's starting behind me, it's starting below me. And all of a sudden I tried to ski out of it. You know, like I'm very calm in stressful situations, like hold on. And I couldn't quite hold on. In the end, I got caught in the gully and I tumbled for about 400 or 500 meters, like a doll in a dryer over and over and over. And I felt some big flash of light and I was like, oh my God, something happened, but I was struggling and I managed to stay on top. You know, I struggled and just like white water in an ocean, you just kind of which way's up, and then just kind of swam my way up and managed to luckily stay on top of this avalanche debris and have my head out. Here's kind of a shot of it all. Look at it. Like, you know, how am I going to get away from that? It's everywhere around me. It's 100 meters below me, 50 meters around me, pretty wild. Sort of a class 3 avalanche that I definitely should not have survived. If you look in this photo, you can kind of see where my arrow here is over on the left. That's kind of where I ended up. And I'm super fortunate that I didn't end up at the bottom, because there was probably, I don't know, 6 meters, 18 feet of snow at the bottom, that I definitely would have died. I mean, I'm in the middle of Pakistan, and you can kind of see way back up there at the top where it all started. So it was a crazy tumble, managed to somehow stay. And really, I got lucky. Snap tip fib, somehow, that's all I got. A couple short shoulder, lost my GoPro, but really, really got away lucky in a class 3. And this kind of sent me on a whole other path, because I thought I'd be healed in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and back on. I've never really hurt myself at this point. And I was like, oh, I'll be back. But it was such a crazy break that I was probably never going to get back to where I was. I was living at home, just healing, and, really kind of trying to struggle with who I was. Because for years I'd been this adventurer, this guy with tons of endurance and strength, and I could do all these things. And then all of a sudden I was broken, and I was on my couch, and I had no idea if I really could ever do any of that again. I mean, my physio was like, I would stop dreaming about that and, start focusing on other things. I was like, no way. Like, part of me needs adventure. So this shirt, I'm not Greg Hill, it's kind of a joke that a buddy of mine had made. But at that point, I was really wondering who I was, and really looking at my life, and sitting there for quite a long time, not being able to walk or anything. I was like, what is my life? And I really looked at it, and I was like I mentioned, like a book, and I was like, wow, it's really neat. I'm inspiring people to live their lives, to push themselves, to just search out these rewards. But it was almost a bit selfish, that whole idea. It's like, it's great, but it's like, what was I doing for the rest of the world? I was getting so much rewards from Mother Nature, but yet I wasn't really doing anything to make the world a better place. And I started to look at the things I'd seen in my life, and what I thought about climate change, and what I thought I could do. And this glacier is 2006. So the last time I'd actually been on the Athabasca Glacier, in this spot, I'd been standing on glacier. And if you look, the glacier is really far away. And this is 12 years later. And I started to think about all the different changes I'd seen. And I was like, oh my God, like, I am actually part of these changes. And I'm part of the problem. So is there a way that I could kind of maybe change my life and use this little soapbox I got to influence others, that maybe I could help influence things in a much positive way? So I love this joke, like, Daddy, what did you do in the climate war? And it really is. It's like, there's this world's changes going on right now. And it's like, well, do I want to be part of the problem, or do I want to be part of the solution? And that's what this cartoon looks at me. It's like, my kids would look at me and say, Dad, did you do anything to try to help make it better? And that's what I realized that I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to doing. So I was on the couch, and I was like, what could I do? What could I do? And the first thing I did is a carbon footprint calculation. It was like, okay, let's analyze my life. And this number, 21 metric tons, is not even close, because it didn't take in the heli guiding I was doing. It didn't take in the snowmobiling. There was so much that actually didn't fit in the calculator, because my life was so wild that there's things I just couldn't put in. So this was just an idea that, oh my God, my life is out of control. I'd be in Norway skiing one week, I'd come back to be a dad, and then I'd go to France the next week, and my flights were out of control. Everything was it was to live an incredible life, but it just didn't have enough to change. So I was like, I did this, and I looked at all the cool changes I could do. And there's so many things you can do. You can hang your clothes up to dry, you can recycle, or you can eat a plant-based diet, you can switch to electric car. And I really was just looking at all the different options, what changes could I actually do? One of the big ones that hit me right off the bat, and this is because my brother's been preaching it for quite a long time. My brother's an environmentalist. His name's Graham Hill. And this was a TED Talk he did in 2010. And it's kind of a way to limit your footprint a bit, is just to become a weekday vegetarian. And there's also health reasons to eat a little bit less red meat. But when Graham did this, it was pretty funny, because he'd come and visit, and he'd be like, oh, I'm a weekday vegetarian. And we'd sneak in meat on the weekday just to kind of bug him. And I wasn't ready at that time. I wasn't ready to change. And, it was kind of almost a fun thing to bug him and not make him perfect. But the idea isn't about being perfect. It's just about making changes and moving forward. And that's what I've started to realize. So once I was like, okay, Greg, what can you do? The first thing that came to mind was, well, I can just kind of do a quick, easy change in my diet. It's easy. You just basically Monday to Friday, you eat vegetables, and then on the weekends, you eat as much meat as you possibly can. No, you don't. For me, I was like, okay, Monday to Friday, my whole family and I were going to be weekday veg. Weekends, we'd eat meat. And it was an easy change. It took a little bit, and all of a sudden it's a habit, and we've been doing it for years. And then basically I just was trying to figure out what I could do as an adventurer. And here it is. I've always approached skiing a little differently. I just see the potential, I see what else you can do, and I always search for that.
I've always set big goals for myself. In 2010, I climbed and skied 2 million feet, climbing 77 summits along the way. Nobody had ever done that before. And after that, I wasn't really sure what my next goal would be. To me, skiing right now is just incredible. It's these moments in the mountains where we're just lucky to live. I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm looking at my kids and I'm wondering, what am I teaching them? And I looked at myself and I said, well, I'm teaching them to live selfishly and not care about your effect on the world. I said, it's time to change. It's time to curb my carbon footprint. So I sold my big truck. I sold my snowmobile. I got an electric car, tried to stop flying as much as possible. And I've been skiing locally. It's so much more fun to really get to know your backyard. Exploration to me doesn't just mean climbing summits and skiing new lines. It means exploring new ways of living, new ways of accessing adventure, just exploring new ways of being. In this time and age, the way we share all our ideas is through videos and stills. My hope is that through filming and sharing all my adventures and proving that this is possible is that people will undertake it and join the movement. I don't see myself as an activist, but if I look at my actions, I realize I am, and that I'm pushing and promoting an idea that I firmly believe in. And it's fun to bring people along on that journey and ideally help convince them that it's the right way. So I've set out to climb 100 summits in an electric vehicle, just to prove that these types of adventures are possible. I am just one person, but I hope I can inspire others to take up this challenge and make a difference.
So yeah, I mean, for me, that's really what it was. All of a sudden, I was like, let's make some changes. And I went from the big F-350 on the left to that little electric car. And this is in 2017. At that point, there was much less electric vehicle adoptions compared to there are now. And I really wanted to prove it. And if I could live in my little town, this mountain town, and prove that a little e-car could work for adventures, then anybody around the world could live with an e-car and have great life. So it was a great step. It was super fun. And it was kind of a vehicle for an idea. Once I kind of switched the car, all of a sudden, you know, I did the vegetarian, and it was really all these little changes were kind of adding up. And the next thing I realized is I wanted to kind of work with something that had a bigger voice. And Protect Our Winters Canada is this nonprofit, environmental nonprofit that just kind of is working to unite the outdoor community and then change policies in Canada. And this was something that I've been doing for quite a while now. And it's been a great movement because we're really all just using our voices, getting them together and having a louder voice to help the government make changes. We've got Olympians and all these great inspiring people that are telling the world that it's important, and hopefully getting others to join us. And that's been a really fun passion project too. So Protect Our Winters Canada, there's Protect Our Winters in the States. It's kind of a bigger nonprofit, but really it's uniting the voice and it's making a lot of changes. It's super fun to see. And then, you know, you look at your own footprint and there's all these different things you can do. And for me, it was flying. So that's why I've been adventuring locally. And, you know, during COVID, it's been a lot easier too, because you're not allowed to go anywhere. But I've definitely said no to a lot of cool trips, but yet tried to just prove that you can adventure in your backyard. And I'm really fortunate that I chose to live in Revelstoke because there's a ton of adventure, and that's why I moved here. So why travel the world when I've got enough in my backyard? Yeah, this is kind of just my circle of change that I could hit at, and flying was definitely a huge one. Well, I don't fly much anymore. So yeah, let's quickly, this will be the little education part to it. We're going to talk carbon calculation and just sort of the changes we can do. The biggest thing first is that this is a judgment-free zone. Like, none of us are perfect. None of us, no matter what, once you're living, you've got a footprint, and we don't want to get hung up on, oh, I'm not perfect, so I don't want to make any changes, because none of us are ever going to be perfect, but we can all be a bit better. With Protect Our Winters, we say progress over perfection. And that is what it's all about. So don't feel bad if you can't do certain things, but maybe there's other things you can do. And it's really just kind of picking your battles, It's not being too hard on yourself. It's just kind of accepting that, yes, I'm going to have a footprint, but oh, I could do a little change here, a little change there. And, you know, it's fine. It's fine to not be perfect, but let's just do little changes. And also when we get into this is I'm not a scientist. I'm a skier, guide, you know, adventurer. So some of this stuff is, you know, you could get somebody else that could talk a lot better to it, but I'm just going to kind of glaze over at like the 40,000 foot level and just kind of show you the changes, different ways we can change. First best thing to do is to do a carbon calculation. There's a bunch out there that you can do, and they'll just kind of, they'll help you see where you could possibly make changes: travel, home, food, goods and services, that sort of thing. Where do your carbon emissions come from? So all of this, the carbon footprint it's all about the atmosphere, and the atmosphere surrounds the world. It's like this blanket that kind of holds in the gases, and it really regulates the temperature of the earth. And if we put in more greenhouse gases, then it's going to slowly make the world hotter. So basically it's all about the greenhouse gases. But yeah, you just look at this and you can kind of see all the different changes. And like I said, you know, maybe you can do the food one, or maybe not. Maybe you want to work on the transportation one, or maybe you just want to buy less stuff. Like there's all these different things we can do. For me, I did this calculation and I was like, okay, let's work on travel. And like, you know, I travel a lot less. I still have one gas car and an electric car. I do the majority of my stuff in the electric car, but sometimes when my family wants to go to the city and we don't have a lot of time and we can't fit it all in my little car, we take the gas car, and that's fine. You know, it's just balancing it out and figuring out what works best. You know, now finally so 2017 is when I started all this, but there's been so many big changes. There's finally 4x4 vehicles. Tesla's been crushing it forever, but there's all these different companies that are coming out, and some of them are really sexy. Like I personally think the Rivian's incredible. I would love to have it. They've got the longer range. They've got 4x4. They would really work well for my lifestyle. That little electric car of mine works, but you know, it's probably a little bit less safe than taking a nice 4x4 truck. But yeah, you know, you start looking at your home and you're like, well, what can I do? My house is heated. There's some natural gas. There's some electricity. You know, we're going to be using that. For me, I've offset my natural gas. I know how much I use a year. So I've actually found some green offsetter for my natural gas just to kind of balance it out. But I've always loved cooking with natural gas, but lately I've switched it to induction stove, which is different. It's electrical, and eventually I'll hopefully have solar panels, which is where this leads into, you know, figuring out where your energy sources are coming from is really important. I live in BC and it's 98% hydroelectricity. Like everything, dams aren't perfect, but they're better than fossil fuels. So eventually I'd like to get some solar panels. I've got some on order. That I've got a roof that I built for them, and I'll hopefully put them in next summer. And that'd be really neat to be powering my car with the sun. I would love the circularity of that, and I think it'd be really neat. But as it stands in BC, the hydro's pretty good. And, you know, that's kind of a great way that the snow I'm skiing on melts and powers the car that's taking me to go ski on that snow again. Yeah, you start looking at food. I mentioned the vegetarianism, and it's intimidating, but a lot of the stuff you make a change, and sometimes it's just little choices. You know, you start looking at the difference between beef, chicken, and beans. And beef, let's say it's 100% impact. Chicken's 10, and then beans is 1. So, you know, sometimes you go out, instead of getting the beef burger, you get the chicken burger, and it's a small little change, but it actually is change, and it makes it a little bit better. Biggest thing, yeah, it just seems like meat, health-wise, meat is not the best too. If you eat red meat all the time, it's not good for your heart or your blood pressure and stuff like that. So all of this kind of balances your impacts on the world, but it also helps balance out your health too. Shopping's a big one. I mean, especially for me, I'm a professional athlete. I work with all these companies. I get so much gear every year, but for me, I've been trying to work with those companies to make their gear better. And, you know, the gear that I get, I pass it on to other people, and, you know, just try to want a little less, or what I get to be quality, or also just to make sure that what I'm buying is sourced from a company that's working at being better. And again, you kind of shopping with a conscience is the idea. And you do, every time you go buy something, you can decide, you know, for like all my stuff in my shower, my soap, my shampoo, these are all bars now. I don't have all the plastic stuff. And they're bars that come in cardboard, and my shaving is all metal. And, you know, you can just always make these little changes. There's these little choices that make change. And if we all make those little choices, it's going to really add up. Something that's big, maybe not for me, because I don't have a huge portfolio because I'm a ski bum and I just kind of live my life. But one of the biggest things you can actually do is talk to your banks and make sure your money is invested in the right spot. And this is quite wild. You can see how big it is. Yeah, to me, it's like, oh, you could do all these other changes, but if your money's invested in the wrong place, that could be the biggest thing. So you're like, oh, like I said, you just kind of pick your little battles, and some of the changes can be really big, and some of them you might not even be able to do. Maybe you need to fly a lot. So something else you can do, my brother went through a lot of his environmental things. He started the Carbonauts lately, and this is his new company. And it's sort of what we'll talk about that I'm doing with these ski trips, but it's on a bigger scale where you can sign up and he'll help you look at your lifestyle and how you can change it. You can kind of see that there's things we can do. And here I am in Revelstoke. I want to share what I've got. I want to share these mountains. I want to adventure with people and show them the beauty and get them that incredible skiing. But there's this whole guilty side of me that's like, well, if I'm encouraging people to fly from far-flung places to get here, like once they're here, is there actually anything I could do that would make their lives, maybe I could offset their flights, or is there anything I can do? And that's what this idea is. And as I mentioned, it's something we're exploring, and it's not perfect. I just want to figure out, like, if my clients could come and we could learn that stuff and they could go back empowered to change more, then maybe that's a little less guilty and we'd all feel a bit better. Because there's nothing quite like just climbing mountains, human powered, and the conversation you have on the skin track. So if I could kind of lead those conversations to make people's lives better at home and to figure out how to offset their trip, it'd be a pretty neat idea. Because I want everyone to come here and to explore this powder and to get that feeling that I've searched for all the time. It's just, there's this freedom, and I want people to come and enjoy that freedom powder with a little bit less eco guilt, because there's definitely been a lot of guilt lately. So the idea with this green sustainable trips is that I'll talk to you before you come on this trip. We'll do a carbon calculation at home. But the first thing is, for the trip itself, we're going to try to make it greener. So there's ways to look into your flights to make them greener flights to get here. It's not that there's like electric flights to get here, but there's ways to minimize your flights on your way here, or on your way here, you could maybe do a business meeting in Seattle and then come here. So you're kind of like multitasking the trip or what have you. But yeah, there's starting to be these little buttons you can click that help you find better, greener options. So first thing, once you fly here, is we'll offset those flights and figure out how to do it better. But that's kind of like one of the first steps. And then there's a lot of the car rentals are starting to have electric cars, but then, the idea is like, we'll rent an electric car for you so that when you land, you're starting to explore these different options. Some of you maybe already have them at home, but now when you travel, you can actually get them through Turo or actually through some of the regular rental agencies. And so the idea, offset your flights, land, rent an electric car that's all powered by melting snow. And then, looking around Revelstoke, I was like, well, what could they do when you stay here? Like, what is the least footprint for you to have while you're here? And it's actually kind of challenging. Like, nothing's perfect, but I found Arrow's Edge Lodge, and they've got local produce for breakfast. And you're also in somebody else's house. So you're kind of using their same footprint instead of a hotel that's strictly for travelers. You're kind of offsetting it. And it just seems like a good place, and nice beds and nice food and kind of that slightly less of a footprint. And then while you're here, I'll make a couple meals that are sourced from my greenhouse here. We can also find meat within 100 miles and do kind of 100-mile diet, but not for spices. It's just a kind of a flexible diet. But the idea is just to explore how to have less of a footprint and also eat some local produce. I personally canned a bunch of salsas and pasta sauces and that sort of thing from this greenhouse. And with that, we can make some nice dinners. Here's some of my tomatoes. Quite proud of my tomatoes. When we eat out at restaurants or what have you, if not all the meals are made by me, then we'll also find the ones that have local sourced kale and everything else, and we're just kind of making it as local as possible. And then while you're here, part of the idea is that we'll look at that footprint of yours, that carbon calculation you've done, and then we'll kind of explore what changes you're comfortable with, which ones you can do, and just kind of like pick and choose some changes and see how they go. Because my thought is that we can offset and make this trip as light as possible. But if we made bigger changes at home, we kind of be like earning carbon credits for the adventure, is the idea. And if you change more in your day-to-day lifestyle, it's going to have more of an impact than just this 1 week trip where we go skiing or what have you. So, and that's the idea, is I'll give a presentation, we'll really talk and kind of work at trying to be better. I think it'll be a lot of fun personally. It's, there's some of the things are a little uncomfortable, but we'll, like I said, we'll just kind of figure out the battles and the ones you can pick, and we'll just focus on those, and we won't get too hung up on the things we can't change. But in the end, when you come here, I'm going to search out just awesome descents so you can get that feeling of untracked powder. Like, this is what you're here for, but let's learn a bit while you're here. Because that's the idea. It's the idea is, let's have adventure, let's live full lives, but let's just figure out little ways to have a little bit of a lighter footprint. These are the kind of the trips that we propose. The dates are flexible. I could definitely craft some other dates. These are the dates I'd like to start with this year, but if all of a sudden they don't work for you, we could talk and figure out a better option. But basically the trip's 3 days. You land in Kelowna, offset that flight, drive up here in an electric car, and then we'll start, each day we'll go for a great ski, come back wherever you end up staying, an Airbnb, that B&B or what have you, and give the talks, and then we'll go skiing the next day. And really the conversation will be surrounded about how to make the world a little bit better and how to deal with our eco guilt, because I don't know about you, but last summer was crazy. There was fires, there was so much smoke. There, I'm watching these ski lines that have been here for years disappear because they no longer have snow, or the cliffs have fallen apart, and things are really changing. So conversation is going to be fun, but every once in a while, we're going to delve into the depths of how to be better and just try to figure it out. So while you're here, you get obviously me, an experienced certified guide, and we'll definitely always explore areas and get away from everybody and ski that powder I just showed you. And then we'll have 3 great days of skiing. And then while we're here, we'll just, like I say, we'll just keep discussing, and we'll just kind of have fun with it, because we don't want to get bogged down with guilt. It's a thing. We all have an impact. So let's just figure out how to be a little bit less, and then we'll have fun. And hopefully when you leave, you'll be a little bit more educated, and you'll be able to offset some things and figure out little changes that'll make your footprint a little lighter. And really in the end, it's just having that conversation and making it so that we all talk about it with our friends and family. And it's this topic of conversation that then we all make little changes and we all become a little bit better, because small changes by many of us is way better than big changes for one person. Don't get overburdened with eco guilt, and just recognize that if we all start making little changes, and little choices every day are going to add up. So let's just kind of make this next chapter of our lives a little bit better for the world and make those choices.